Congresswoman Kamlager Dove and Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. We're going to end big oil and its dirty energy, but nothing can stop this renewable energy revolution that we are in the midst of, and this crowd of activists and leaders who have come together to say no more to big oil, price gouging, collusion, and disinformation at the highest levels. We need to do more to move forward and faster, including a full fossil fuel phase out to prevent catastrophic warming, but fossil fuel companies are willing to burn up our planet to keep us burning their product. We're in the middle of a wave of oil and gas industry consolidation with nearly $250 billion worth of oil and gas deals in 2023 alone. And these deals are being done with our money. You know who's to blame for the cost to fill up your car at the pump or your energy bill at home. Big oil and big gas companies who are profiteering throughout our entire economy. In the last year alone, 15 big oil companies made $173 billion in profit. At the same time, ExxonMobil spent $64 billion to acquire Pioneer and Chevron, and spent $53 billion to acquire Hess, two of the largest oil and gas deals of the century. But that's not all. 5 other major mergers are also underway. Instead of big oil, we should be calling them even bigger oil, because we are literally paying an even bigger price for their dirty practices throughout our economy. And that's why I, along with colleagues here today, asked the Federal Trade Commission in March to investigate these anti-competitive mergers and to block them, which otherwise will enable more obscene profiteering on the backs of American companies. This is not unprecedented. So the Federal Trade Commission approved Exxon's merger with Pioneer earlier this year, but Scott Sheffield, Pioneer's founder, former CEO, and current board member, was exchanging hundreds of messages with OPEC officials discussing oil output and prices, engaging in illegal price fixing with foreign leaders to raise prices at the pump for millions of Americans. Instead of collusion, they should call it sea oil lusion. It's unethical and unacceptable and outrageous to reward an oil executive for this kind of conspiracy with a multi-billion-dollar merger and a personal oil-soaked 24-karat gold parachute of $68 million. These fossil fuel executives are everywhere, walking the halls of Dubai during the International Climate Conference to influence international global decisions and impacting decisions at every level throughout government, as front groups such as the American Gas Association and the American Petroleum Association do their job. They're even reportedly discussing pay for play with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago as he demands $1 billion from big oil in exchange for the destruction of our economy and our planet through runaway fossil fuel profiteering. By comparison, President Biden is doing everything he can to ensure that we bring down the costs for American drivers. The Federal Trade Commission and now the DOJ must stop the consolidation and collusion that inflates our energy, fuel, and gasoline prices. That is what is at the heart of what's going wrong in our economy. We need to end our addiction to fossil fuels, break up big oil once and for all. These crooks need consequences, not an endless supply of our hard-earned cash. Our energy future will be found in the wind and the solar and the offshore wind and electric vehicles and renewable energy that is already saving consumers and the planet. We need a Green New Deal with a livable future of climate action and good jobs, good union jobs, and environmental justice. It is time we banish these oil-soaked big oil companies into the history books. And now it is my great pleasure to introduce our majority leader and consumer leader in the United States Senate from the state of New York, Chuck Schumer.
Thank
you, Chuck.
And I'm glad to be from New York. And I shouldn't have worn my light gray suit because it shows the rain. But other than that, I'm very happy to be here. And I want to thank our great leaders. I want to thank Senator Markey. I want to thank Senator Whitehouse. I want to thank our two great members of the House, Joe Neguse and Representative Kamala Dove. And I hear that Rep. Barragan is coming, but I don't see her, but she's coming too. Okay, and I also want to thank Climate Power and LCV for bringing us here together today. You know, Senators Markey and Whitehouse are two of the greatest climate champs that this country has ever seen, not just in the Senate, but that the country has ever seen. And they work very hard to expose the misinformation of big oil companies. And our House members have been great leaders on this issue as well. I want to congratulate Congressman Neguse, who I tried to get to run for the Senate at one point, but he's doing very well in the House now. It's the first time I'm with him in his new role as whatever it's called. Okay. Chief Whip, Deputy Whip, I don't know.
I work for you.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. All right, well, today we're here to discuss a tale as old as time. You've heard it before. Big oil companies basking in record profits while hardworking Americans feel the pinch of high prices at the pump. Instead of working to lower gas prices for Americans ahead of a busy Memorial Day weekend, big oil company executives are huddling to find ways to keep prices high and keep their profits soaring. And one of the ways big oil companies spend their time these days is cozying up to Donald Trump, who, as we all know, is no enemy to big oil. The Washington Post account was extremely disturbing. It's a doozy. Donald Trump holds a meeting with the big oil executives at Mar-a-Lago, and he promises big oil executives he'll gut the Democrats' clean energy wins in exchange for $1 billion for his re-election efforts. That is sickening. And it's sickening that Donald Trump would do it, and then he's proud of it. He's proud of ruining our planet and helping these big oil companies. Big oil's greediness doesn't stop, of course, with Donald Trump. A recent report showed they're among the biggest perpetrators of stock buybacks. So here, you know, even their claim that they need to pump more oil, which we despise, is false because they'd rather most of all give the money to their stockholders. And that's where the money's going. If they were smart and they wanted a future for themselves, they'd take that money and start putting it into clean energy, as lots of smart business people are doing, and it's being very successful. When we put in the IRA $369 billion for clean power, that was what we thought it would be. It's $1 trillion going on $2 trillion. It's so popular. So this is something that where both capitalism and green energy, a good climate, a good globe can mix if anyone's forward thinking. But the big oil companies are always looking backwards, and that's to their detriment and America's detriment. Stock buybacks aren't good for the economy. They're not good for workers. They're not good for anybody except the big oil executives and their wealthy shareholders. So that's no good. But it doesn't stop there. Back in the fall, ExxonMobil proposed a $60 billion acquisition of Pioneer Natural Resources. Chevron proposed a $53 billion acquisition of Hess Company, Hess Oil. Two of the biggest petroleum deals in American history, two of the biggest deals of the 21st century. These proposed acquisitions could be disastrous for consumers. So I sent a letter, I led a letter with 24 colleagues calling for the FTC to investigate. And, you know, one of the great mistakes, and this one was a Democratic mistake, under the Clinton administration, they allowed Exxon to merge with Mobil. They allowed Chevron to merge with Texaco. And what was the result? Higher oil prices and less competition. We introduced you already. So that was a disgrace. And now they're trying to do it again. Now, so next week I'll be sending a letter to DOJ calling on them to investigate and prosecute collusion and price fixing that may have increased gasoline, fuel, and energy costs based on the report done by the FTC when they unfortunately allowed Mobil to merge with Pioneer, which I thought was a bad idea. The federal government must use every tool at our disposal to investigate the oil industry, hold accountable liable actors, end illegal activities. There's something wrong, very wrong, when big oil companies rake in the cash by polluting the atmosphere and at the expense of the American people. So we Democrats are going to keep working to shine the spotlight on big oil and hold them accountable. And I thank again all of our leaders who got here together to talk about this issue. Thank you. Good. Now I'd like to call on the great Sheldon Whitehouse, one of our great, this guy cares so much about climate. He spent one of his whole vacations going to garden clubs in the South to convince the garden clubs to be pro-environment, pro-green.
Thank you, Chuck.
How were those garden clubs?
They were good.
Good.
People listened to them. So here we are, right across the lawn from the Supreme Court, whose capture was effected by fossil fuel billionaires. Leonard Leo, who packed that court, was funded by fossil fuel billionaires. And they got their money's worth because that court stopped climate progress over and over again, saving the fossil fuel industry hundreds of billions of dollars in cleanup. But that wasn't all that court did for the fossil fuel industry. It also whittled down the ability of prosecutors to make cases of corruption. It used to be, when I was making these cases, that you would trust a jury to decide what was improper corruption. This court took away that ability of American jurors to make that decision, and instead they narrowed it down to a specific, exact quid pro quo. So it has been very hard to investigate and prosecute the fossil fuel industry for its efforts corrupting that building. And then comes Donald Trump, and he has a private meeting with big oil execs, and he says to them in that private meeting, give me $1 billion quid, and I will give you quo. All the fossil fuel helping rollbacks that we can provide. He actually had a list. At the same time, big oil folks are writing his executive orders for him in anticipation of him being elected. There is a real stink of corruption, and with respect to this episode, it hits the quid pro quo barrier. So Chairman Wyden and the Finance Committee and I have written to all of the companies present at that meeting, demanding answers, information, documents about what took place, about what led up to it, about what the context is for that quid pro quo corrupt offer. And just yesterday, my House friend's wonderful colleague Jamie Raskin and I held a press conference to announce that our investigation about big oil's fraud had gotten to the point where we were formally referring the matter to the Department of Justice to do the same kind of investigation that they did of big tobacco, which, by the way, they won. So we have got to reel in the corruption of big oil. This quid pro quo offer gives us a hell of a good reason to pursue it. And thank you very much to LCV and to Climate Power for all of their support in these efforts. And with that,
over to me.
Over to you.
Just a big round of applause for Majority Leader Schumer, for Budget Leader Sheldon Whitehouse, who, as he just walked through, has done so much to dig into the corruption, to dig into the greed, and make sure that they're held accountable. And of course, to Senator Markey. Himself, the one and only, truly. As we head into Memorial Day weekend and the summer driving season, as is the case every summer, Americans are being squeezed at the pump, paying inflated gas prices that are kept artificially high by big oil and corporate greed. And like clockwork, congressional Republicans are trying to exploit that anguish to score cheap points. So it's no surprise that this year they're blaming the Biden administration and Democrats in Congress. But facts matter, like the fact that big oil has been extracting record-breaking profits since the end of the pandemic, while families have been subject to historic pain at the pump. Or the fact that the Biden administration has overseen record production of energy options, including landmark investments in clean energy alternatives that are creating hundreds of thousands of jobs and lowering costs. We are also, as many just detailed, learning facts about Donald Trump's dealings with big oil, and they are unprecedented. So unprecedented that they are now under investigation by Budget Chair Whitehouse. Earlier this month, we learned Trump promised big oil CEOs that he would enact their agenda, steamrolling clean energy progress and all restraints on their profiteering while asking them to direct $1 billion to his campaign. Trump even called it a deal. He said he was giving them a bargain because the price tag would be dwarfed by tax breaks that he would give him. And he's right. Early estimates show that those tax breaks would be $110 billion. Big oil-backed advocacy groups, think tanks, and climate deniers have prepared an executive agenda that will pad big oil's profits at the expense of everyone else. Meanwhile, President Biden and Democratic members of Congress are holding price gougers accountable and fighting to lower costs for American families. So I would like to introduce Assistant Democratic Leader Gouging.
Well, good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good to be here. First, let me say my gratitude to all the organizations that have convened us this morning for this important conversation and opportunity for us to communicate directly to the American people. I would echo the remarks of Leader Schumer and would just say I don't think you could find two greater champions for climate action whose clarity of purpose in that regard has been steadfast than Senator Whitehouse and Senator Markey. Who have just been champions year after year here in the United States Senate fighting for climate action on behalf of the American people. We're grateful to call them colleagues in the upper chamber and even more grateful for the work that they are doing each and every day. I will be brief because you're going to have an opportunity to hear from two of the most significant climate action advocates in the House of Representatives, my dear colleagues in the House Democratic Caucus. For me, all of this boils down to three words: polluters over people. Over the last 16, 17 months, we have witnessed in the House an extreme MAGA Republican majority that has taken every opportunity to pass bill after bill to give giveaways to oil companies and to corporate polluters near and far. Our chairwoman of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, a senior member of the Energy and Commerce Committee, has seen this play out in markup after markup on her committee, as I'm sure she'll relay to all of you. Meanwhile, you have Senator Markey's colleagues on the other side of the aisle in the United States Senate defending the very corruption that so many Americans across our country have such deep disdain for. For me, there could not be a greater contrast in terms of the efforts of House Republicans and Senate Republicans in defending corporate price gouging, just by way of example, and the work that House Democrats and Senate Democrats under President Biden's leadership pursued over the course of the last several years in enacting the most significant climate action since well, we disagree, agree to disagree. What I would say, with respect to his views, and I would say the views of the American people, just by way of reference, a poll was done 3 days ago, canvassing the American people on their top priority, which is addressing costs. And when asked what they would like to see the United States Congress do about it, 72% of the American public suggest that we should be tackling corporate price gouging. 72%. Corporate price gouging that's raising fuel prices, raising food prices, raising prices of everyday goods for the American people. So the American people are with us, and I think share our sentiments that we ought to defend the climate action progress that we made in the Inflation Reduction Act, and that we ought to target the corporate price gouging that has become rather so pervasive by virtue of the actions of these oil companies, and we should target head on. And that's exactly what we will continue to do, certainly in the House of Representatives under the leadership of Leader Jeffries, and of course the leadership of the two colleagues that I'm so privileged to be able to join with this morning. And so with that, I want to bring up to the podium the chairwoman of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus, who has been a leader on preserving our public lands, on broadening access to national parks, and on tackling climate action head on. She was doing it long before she was in the United States Congress as a municipal official back in Southern California, and she has now taken that leadership here to Washington, D.C. We're grateful for her leadership. Nanette Barajan.
Well, thank you so much. We've heard today about how big oil's price collusion with OPEC has cost Americans money. There's also another consequence that big oil's record profits and their collusion has had, and that is the harm to our public health, and it's the destruction of our climate. Now, I grew up in South Los Angeles, in an area called the Harbor area. It's a low-income community, communities of color, about 70% Latino. It's right next to oil refineries and urban oil drilling. And so not only do I know personally the effects to health and the climate and the air pollution, it's my constituents know it and feel it, whether it's higher rates of cancer, whether it's asthma, respiratory illnesses. And for years, our communities have suffered while big oil downplays the effects to the pollution and the effects rather on pollution. And as I mentioned, it's been especially impactful and harmful for Latino communities, where air pollution in Latino zip codes is 14% higher than predominantly white areas, and Latinos are 165% more likely to live in counties with unhealthy levels of particulate matter. Now, when the oil industry colludes with OPEC to raise prices, it's communities like mine that feel it the most and feel it the greatest at the pump. So while people are forced to choose between food and fuel, all while struggling to breathe. And this is, again, one of the issues on this collusion, and it's an environmental justice issue, and it's an economic justice issue. Big oil is putting profits over people, and they're ripping off our consumers when they're colluding with OPEC, and now we've learned they're conspiring with Trump to keep the money flowing, all at the expense of our pocketbooks, at the expense of our health and the planet that we need to pass on to our children. Republicans and Donald Trump are working with big oil in lockstep to do whatever. As Senator Whitehouse said, they're working together now on writing these executive orders. And we have to say enough. And we must hold big oil accountable. Democrats and President Biden will continue to fight to end fossil fuel subsidies, making sure we're investing in clean energy and continuing that, to build on what we have started in the IRA, and to go after price collusion. We will continue to work to lower costs and reduce pollution to benefit the American people, not big oil. And so I'm proud to stand here with all of my colleagues and senators working on this issue. And with that, I have the opportunity to introduce one of our newer members of Congress, our freshman member, but not new to the scene on fighting climate and legislating. Long before coming here in the State House in California, my colleague from California, Representative Kamala Harris.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. I am Congresswoman Sydney Kamlager-Dove, and I proudly represent California's 37th Congressional District. You know, we are here because of all of those young people, all of those school-age young people that you saw walking behind us who deserve a clean climate, not one suffocated by big oil. We are here today to shine a light on the shadiness, the corporate greed, and the electioneering going on between big oil, Donald Trump, and his sycophants. I serve as vice-ranking member on the House Natural Resources Committee, where we have had no less than 8 hearings on offshore gas production in this Congress. Why? Because Republicans are unabashedly doing the bidding of big oil. Trump's lackey Republicans in Congress say they want to address high gas prices, yet they have done absolutely nothing meaningful to lower gas prices at the pump. No studies, no reforms, no understanding that drilling will not lower gas prices. But they do want to have hearings actually on how to mine and drill asteroids in outer space. So you go figure. Recently, the FTC uncovered evidence that big oil colluded with OPEC to keep gas prices high so that they could turn a bigger buck at the expense of the American people. So today I joined Ranking Member Grijalva in sending a letter to Chair Westerman urging him to open an investigation into the allegations raised by the FTC because Americans deserve to know if their public lands are being used against them to drive up their gas prices. At every opportunity, it seems like these Republicans are putting polluters over people. As you've heard, to make matters worse, Donald Trump is currently under investigation for promising to undo the historic progress that Democrats and Biden have made in fighting and addressing the climate crisis. Give him $1 billion and he will do what you ask. So he's going from hush money to big oil money real quick. I want to add that in 2022, California passed a law banning oil drilling within 32, it's natural hair, I think I can manage, but I'll take the umbrella. In 2022, California passed a law banning oil drilling within 3,200 feet of homes, schools, hospitals, etc. This was a crucial step forward in California addressing the issues around environmental justice. And yet this fall, California voters will have to vote on a big oil-led ballot referendum to reverse this decision. It is big oil's ability to meddle in our elections and potentially overturn progress that Californians voted on. I'm telling you, this is proof that they are playing for keeps at the expense of our climate. So we, as House Democrats, are going to continue to push back and stand up to big oil and hold them accountable for the climate crisis, the climate chaos they have created. Thank you. And I'm now honored to turn it over to our climate champion, LCV Senior Vice President Tiernan Sittenfield.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman Kamlager-Dove. Hi, everyone. I'm Tiernan Sittenfeld with the League of Conservation Voters. Don't worry, I'm the last speaker, so you can get out of the rain and the humidity in just a second. But I want to give a huge thanks to our partners, Lori and Climate Power, for bringing us together on this extremely important and timely topic. And of course, huge thanks to the incredible members of Congress who are here today, Senators Schumer, Whitehouse, Markey, and Representatives Neguse, Barragan, and Kamlager-Dove. We are so grateful to all of them for all that they do, fighting for more climate progress, for more environmental justice, for more clean energy, and for standing up to big oil today and every single day. We are with Democrats in Congress and with President Biden, whose leadership we are so grateful for all that they have done for the Inflation Reduction Act, for so much climate progress through executive action. We are with them to defend all of this progress, to make even more progress, to hold big oil accountable, and to make polluters pay. Now, this incredible leadership could not stand in more stark contrast than the MAGA Republicans in Congress and Donald Trump, who are catering to big oil at every single step, even as big oil tries to collude with OPEC to keep prices high. Why? To pad their already enormous profits. This is beyond outrageous. This is completely unacceptable. And we are all in, LCV, Climate Power, our partners across the country, to hold accountable big oil and all of those who stand with them, who stand for more dirty fossil fuels at the expense of our health, our climate, our wallets, and our economy. Thank you, everybody. Now let's all get out of the rain. Thank you all so much.